Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be answering the question, what is a musical sentence? Because if you're studying music at all, you may have come across this word sentence and thought, well, what does that actually mean? Well, in musical terms, it typically means this. So if you have an 8-bar passage of music, 8 measures, following a particular pattern that is this: 2 bars plus 2 bars plus 4 bars, 2 measures plus 2 measures plus 4 measures. That is the pattern that we'd normally expect to see in a musical sentence. It's a very useful way of thinking about music because sometimes you can analyze a piece of music and spot this sentence structure going on. Sometimes if you're writing a piece of music, it's very easy for your music to kind of just ramble off somewhere, and it's quite handy to have some kind of structure, and this musical sentence structure may be something that's really helpful to you. Okay, now how does this actually work, this 2 plus 2 plus 4 thing? Well, what you find is that you have an initial statement of 2 bars or 2 measures that's then repeated either exactly or slightly varied. And then that's followed by 4 bars, 4 measures that somehow use the same material, develop the idea maybe a bit, and finish with a cadence. So we come to the end of our musical sentence. So you can see what I've done here. I've marked up the first 2 bars, the first 2 measures there. Here's the next pair, and then here's the concluding group of 4. And you can see that actually, if we have a look at this first measure, this first bar, and we compare it with this, actually the first 2 phrases in my example are starting off with exactly the same notes. You notice that when we come to the second bar, the second measure, we're starting on the same note, but the first time I'm using 3 different notes, and the second time I'm just holding on to a note. And you can see the second time I've changed the chord. You can then see when I go on to my 4 bars or my 4 measures that in fact the first bar, the first measure of that, is an exact repeat of the first one, the first bar, the first measure we used in those first opening phrases. But then it goes off and develops the idea. So we've had all these quavers or these eighth notes, and I'm extending the idea of these quavers and eighth notes to fill up 3 bars of the music. So it's an extension or a development of the idea. You can also see things like, well, we had an ascending scale in this opening bar, this opening measure, and I've then turned that into a descending scale. And then, having had all those notes next door to each other, what we call conjunct movement, just to finish off, I've kept the quavers going, the eighth notes, but I've used a little bit of disjunct movement, a few leaps as well. So you get the idea as to how you can repeat material, how you can vary material, how you can extend material. All the way through in the left hand, I'm using an accompaniment. It's a kind of waltz, this piece. And you can see that the rhythm is all the same all the way through. So there's giving us a bit of cohesion, a bit of musical glue that sticks these 8 bars, these 8 measures together. So those are the ingredients. So this is how I have decided to write this short extract using the musical sentence structure. So after all that, what does this piece actually sound like? Well, it goes something like this. So, sounds perfectly pleasant, doesn't it? You can hear that sort of waltz thing going on. So let's just kind of break that down hearing it. So my first 2 bars, my first 2 measures. Okay, what happens next in the next 2? So you notice that first bar repeated, then I've got a long note at the end of the second pair of bars, as opposed to the moving notes that we had at the end of that first short phrase. So we've got a long note there instead of that. And then you can hear that I've extended the melody as I move on into the third longer phrase. And the left hand is just chugging along under all this. And and then a chord change this time. Back to the first chord, new chord, new chord, back to the first chord. And in fact, that new chord there was a repeat of the chord that I had there. So you see how you can have certain ingredients that help all this to hang together, but you can also make this structure very clear. So I've got 2 bars, 2 measures. Then I've got another pair of bars or measures using the same idea, slightly varied. So you see it takes us to a different destination. Then I extend to the 4 bars, starting the same. And you can hear how it makes a very satisfying kind of internal structure. So lots of people, when they're composing, just kind of start writing notes and they see where the piece ends up. Some people say, I'm going to write a piece of music in a certain structure, what you might call binary form or ternary form or something like that. But lots of people don't think enough about the internal structure. Okay, so maybe you've got an idea. Lots of composers struggle to write a full-length piece, but they've got an idea. Say you had this idea. You know, that idea came to you during the night and you thought, great, that's going to be lovely at the beginning of my waltz, but I don't know what to do with it. Well, this shows you what you can do with it. You take your initial idea and you say, that's 2 bars or 2 measures. Let's have another pair to match up with that, but let's repeat the first bar and slightly change the second. And all I've done is to chop off the last 2 notes. And then you can say, okay, it's nice to have 2 bars, 2 bars. Now I need 4 just to make it feel as if it's expanding and going somewhere. Because if you keep going 2 bars, 2 bars, 2 bars, 2 bars, it's all little bits, isn't it? And it keeps stopping and starting. So after those 2 bars, 2 bars, the 4 bars is really kind of satisfying. And we really feel as if we've spun it into a longer statement. So you get the idea. That is a musical sentence when you're thinking about 8 bars or 8 measures, but following this specific pattern. 2 bars, 2 measures, 2 bars, 2 measures, 4 bars, 4 measures. Having 2 bars that are repeated or slightly varied, then having 4 bars where you're developing the idea, extending it, and finishing with a cadence. So you notice here, this is chord 5-7 really, going to chord 1. So if I go 5-7 to 1, there is a perfect cadence at the end of the piece. And I hope you can hear how that is a very satisfying way to write. So you could write a sentence, use up 8 bars of your music, you could then write another sentence, and before you know it, you've got your piece going very nicely. So very useful musical structure to think about and to try experimenting with. Is very satisfying to the ear, isn't it? So just an idea as to how to take what you might have as a little musical idea and spin it into something that works really well. You might not want to write in this style, you could write in any musical style, but the sentence structure still works very well indeed. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, let me invite you on a little tour of the Music Matters website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. If you click on courses, there are lots of courses there that you might find extremely useful. And if you're someone who's kind of getting into composing and just wants to kind of get a little bit of a grip on what are the things that I really need to know about, well, have a look at our course called Composing, because this will just give you the essential tools of composition. There are other composers courses out there as well, but that basic course in composition will be just the thing that kind of gets you set up, helps you to think about the essentials that you need if you need to be writing your own music. www.mmcourses.co.uk.